So for everybody listening or watching, I am joined here today by Wyatt Mcgovern. He is a Division I golfer for Columbia University and just has all sorts of accolades. He grew up playing the typical junior golf circuit in California, was the 2019 San Mateo Daily Journal Boys Golfer of the Year, varsity golfer all 4 years in high school, two-time first team All Peninsula Athletic League selection, and just has so many accolades. But I think his favorite accolade is last year's summer, he helped lead the Olympic Club Bay Cities team to a championship that year. But yes, I'm joined by Wyatt Mcgovern. He is very well versed in the whole world of golf, and now he's playing Division I golf. How are you doing, dude?
I'm doing great. I'm happy to be on, and 100% number one accolade is winning the Bay Cities title. I can't wait to defend this year. So pumped about that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Before we get into everything about Columbia and just playing golf, and you've had an exceptional season up to this point, and you've had so many cool things you've been able to do due to that success, I do want to talk about a very special week right now. This is for all golfers, and for most big sports fan, this is Masters Week. And of course, it wouldn't be Masters Week if Tiger wasn't going to come back. And now he had his amazing press conference where he's like, I'm going to come back. They're like, do you think I win? He's like, I do.
Mm-hmm.
It's just been an awesome week, and there's so much leading up to this Masters. Do you have a pick in your mind, or just what are you excited to watch this year at Augusta?
I mean, obviously, I just can't wait to see Tiger. I mean, we heard the rumors like, oh, people are tracking his plane going up and down the East Coast. Oh, he's at Augusta. He's playing with Charlie. Me and all my teammates were following that. And, it's just incredible what he's been able to do to get his body back. And, he wouldn't confirm it for a while. And then I saw a YouTube video last night, or maybe 2 nights ago, of him like on his Sunday practice round. And I was like, he looks like he's, top 10 in the world. So if he can just walk 72 holes, I mean, it's going to be fun to watch. And, like the interview said, he doesn't enter a tournament unless he thinks he can win. So I'm just excited to see that. I think everybody else is excited to see that. And I just hope he can do well.
Absolutely. I think I saw him at the PNC playing with Charlie Woods. That's become like one of my favorite tournaments to watch because of Charlie and Tiger. Yeah. And I thought he hitting the ball, I was like so surprised. And even he's talked about, it's not even the hitting part. It's really just, can he walk 72 holes? And people have talked about it. Augusta is not one of the easier walks. It's definitely one of the toughest walks that they play 100%. All season. So that'll be interesting to see. Do you have a pick, though? I know Tiger might be the fan favorite.
Yeah.
Do you have a pick for who you think is going to win?
I'm not good about following PGA Tour golf. Who's been hot recently?
It's really been Scheffler. Scheffler's been winning everything.
Yeah. A few of my teammates, I think, have thrown out Scheffler. Maybe John Rahm. I think.
Yeah.
I could see that. I don't know. That's definitely not an expert's opinion, but I could see that happening. If I had to pick somebody, I'd say John Rahm.
Yeah, John winning the U.S. Open last year. His game's been really good. Just lost world number 1 to Scotty, but definitely still up there. I'm a Brooks type guy. I just like his mindset in majors. It's like just very laser focused. But I'm a big Brooks guy. But going into just talking about tournaments and stuff, you've been playing tournaments pretty much your whole life. You started playing golf when you were 1 year old. And so you've pretty much been raised in just playing golf. Was there any moment growing up where you kind of followed another sport? I know you played football a little bit, but has golf kind of been the primary focus since day one?
It's always been like my favorite sport, I started, I've been around the game my whole life, started truly like actually trying to play on my own when I was like 4 or 5, and started playing tournaments when I was like 8. And so it's always been like my number one sport, my favorite sport. When I was in middle school, I like had the goal and the dream of playing college golf. So it was always like basically priority number one. But I always played every sport growing up. I played soccer and baseball and football and basketball. And my freshman year in high school, I played basketball and football too on my freshman teams. And then I dropped basketball because I was missing too many tournaments in the winter and all that practice time that was like building up into the more important tournaments in the spring. And I was missing that. So I dropped basketball, kept playing football all throughout high school. But, I just always loved sports and I didn't want to stop playing them just because I was pursuing college golf. I didn't want to let that like hold me back and take away from the experiences that I wanted. So I just kept playing.
Would you say golf kind of fitted you a little bit better than the other sports? I know like when you think of college golf, it's definitely not an easy route. And especially like California is kind of like a hotspot for
Mm-hmm.
junior golf. Why did you kind of decide to pursue mainly golf instead of these other sports that you were interested in?
Yeah. I guess it was always like my first like love, I would say, when it comes to sport. Um, and I could have like tried to play college football, but I was undersized. I wasn't really undersized in high school, but when you go to the collegiate level, it becomes a
Right.
big issue when you're 5'11", 175. It's not really gonna pan out well for you. So, like I knew that early on, if I wanted to get a good education and play college athletics, it was going to be through the route of golf. And I had no problems with that because I really enjoyed it. So it was just always staying on that path.
You're now at Columbia University, which is just academically is a very rigorous school and looked at as one of the top of the nation. It's part of the Ivy League, obviously, and it's an extremely great school. But talking about it in terms of golf, it's in New York City. There are great golf courses in New York, but not especially in the city. And then the weather doesn't really go hand in hand with all year round golf, especially like a state like California. Did you want to go to Columbia in a school at this weather and you were kind of okay with that? I know their schedule works around it where they play all over the place, but was that kind of a thought in your head, just considering the weather going to an East versus West Coast school?
When it came down to it, as far as recruiting goes, I didn't have a ton of options because like my recruiting class basically happened like during COVID, and there was a recruiting dead period, and the NCAA gave an extra year of eligibility to everybody who's playing college athletics. So basically, all those things combined to make it harder to get recruited for my year. And then so a lot of opportunities fell through, and I was just grateful to get the opportunity to play at Columbia because playing at a school like Columbia was always at the top of my list. So, distance from home, weather, access to golf courses, it didn't really factor too much into my decision when you look at just how awesome an opportunity it is to play at Columbia. I mean, there's no doubt that it'd be great if we had a golf course right next to our campus. But, you sort of, those are small problems when you look at
Right.
all the pros that come with playing at Columbia.
Yeah, golf in New York though is pretty cool. I know Beth Page is out there. Have you gotten out? What's like your favorite course that you've been able to play out there since you've been there?
That's a good question. I haven't gotten out to play Bethpage yet. The team played a tournament in the fall there. They only took 5 guys. Unfortunately, I was left off the roster for that one. It was the only tournament I didn't play in.
Mm.
But what would be my favorite? Maybe Rolling Green that we just played on Friday. That's in the like suburbs of Pennsylvania. But we just hosted a tournament down there on Monday because one of our alums is the head pro there. And so that's how our coach got the connection. And I was actually really impressed. I didn't have super high expectations going into it or anything. But they've hosted like a U.S. Women's Open and a U.S. Women's Amateur. And, it wasn't in the best shape because it's early April on the East Coast. But
Right.
I could tell that when that thing gets going, it could be really good. So I'd say that that's probably my favorite, especially architecturally too.
Would you say the tournament schedule for Columbia is like the courses in terms of the courses is pretty good?
I'd say it's pretty good. It's hard for college teams to like get a really nice course to like host a tournament at because you're looking at blocking off tee times for like 3 days, and a lot of like small East Coast college programs are on tight budgets. So it's hard to like, what are you going to do? Are you going to get a sponsor from a really nice course to, basically make that happen? Or are you going to spend a bunch of money on getting a really great course? So I'd say it's hard to get really good courses. But, we get good courses and we're happy with it. And we're just looking for opportunities to compete. So I'd say it's a pretty good situation.
Hopefully they're just at least better than some of the JGA&C courses
Oh my God,
in
dude. Way
California.
better.
Um,
Way better.
I know you've probably experienced this a lot, especially you talked about it when you were recruited during COVID. And
Hmm.
I know golf is kind of looked at as maybe the one sport that wasn't hit as bad just because it's an outdoor sport. So like I know when COVID hit, I couldn't golf for maybe about 2 months and then it was kind of
Hmm.
back, like maybe they had something in the cups to block the ball or whatever, or like no rakes.
Hmm.
But I've had two other guests that have come on the show, both athletes, one a Division I punter for Cal Poly, one a Division I lineman for Utah State. And both of them have kind of expressed how COVID was almost a blessing for them. They're able to take
Yeah.
this period where they kind of had this break and just really grinded. Like some people kind of took it off, sat back, watched TV, did whatever. And then a couple
Hmm.
other people realized, I got 3-4 months where like the world is almost on pause and I can kind of just go to work. Would you say in your experience, COVID was kind of more harmful, just making everything a lot tougher, or that you really benefited from that time you had off?
I'd say from my own personal development standpoint, it was actually a positive because, I was finishing up my junior year and then I went into I was getting a lot of good practice in. And then I went into the summer after my junior year and actually really improved on like the past year. I think my scoring average dropped by at least 2 strokes.
Wow.
And that was a big thing. I dropped from like, I was maybe 75 and a half to 73 and a half in that range. And, that was really good. That was really big for me. And then from the recruiting side of it, like I said, it took away a lot of opportunities. But at the same time, it opened the door at Columbia because I had a friend, Dan Terrell, who just graduated in this past spring, but he was on the team and he was one of the co-captains while Coach Mueller was trying to get a second recruit for my year. And with the recruiting dead period instituted, it was hard for a coach to go see recruits. And with the connection I had with Dan, I was able to have Dan put a good word in for me. And Coach had already seen me at the Kerry Cup, which is a camp/tournament that I went to in Ireland in 2019. So he'd already seen me, and I had that connection with Dan. So it made it easier for me to get the spot at Columbia because, he knew me and he couldn't really get to know anybody else. And then on top of that, I played really well that summer and was able to like shoot to the top of his list. So everything worked out at Columbia and I'm really grateful for that. And I got no regrets as far as, or no, bad thoughts about COVID in any respect because of it. But it definitely had some bad effects too.
Definitely, definitely. You talked about your scoring average dropping 2 shots, and I feel like you said that so casually.
Mhm.
But that's like at that level from a 75 to like a 73, that's almost like a runner going from like a 6 to like a sub 5 to like a 530 to like a 514. It's like those incremental
Mhm.
changes.
Yeah.
What really goes into dropping your score that much? Just for all the golf nerds out there, is it really like short game work? Just hitting the ball
Mhm.
more pure. Course management.
Yeah. So for me, it was really just learning how to practice correctly. And,
Mm,
my dad would always tell me like, oh, so-and-so says you got to spend 70% of your time on short game. And I don't really buy into the whole, like, you have to do this or you have to do that. But I started doing a lot of more like random drills. And for example, with my short
mm,
game practice, I would throw like 9 balls around the green in varying like difficult lies and positions. And then I would set a goal for myself and be like, okay, I got to get 7 of these up and down. And I would keep doing it until I got 7 up and down. Or then when I would go practice my putting, I wouldn't just like go putt around aimlessly on the green like I would do. I mean, it sounds really stupid to me saying it now, but I used to do that for a while and call that putting practice when I was, young in high school. But I would actually do drills and do games, and that stuff really helped me. And then also course management was big too. Just being really smart about where I'm hitting my shot, where I'm aiming, because you look at how many shots you throw away just by missing it in the wrong spot, and you're like,
mm.
you can't miss it there, and you still aim at a target that allows you to miss it there. So it was just a lot of like choosing the right clubs that take those bad things out of play, bogey limitation is huge when you're going to try and drop your scoring average. And, I just did a lot of those things well in the early part of 2020 to just sort of like get my game in a position where I could go out there and like consistently shoot better scores.
Yeah, I definitely know what you're talking about. I've been a golfer for a good part of my life, and I definitely know like going out to like practice and like knowing what to do when you're out there is definitely something that takes time. Like you have to like learn to structure your practices, because I think most junior golfers or any golfers at any level have experienced like a time where they're just going out there dropping balls, hitting the same chip on like a nice tight lie and then moving on. Maybe they do that for 30, 40 minutes every day, and it doesn't really equate to anything. You kind of have to be able to measure your practice, all that stuff. When you talk about golf practice and you really talk about like focusing your time and really doing drills that are, really more like you're more engaged and you're really setting goals for yourself, where did that mindset kind of come in? Was that just something that you just decided that just kind of clicked in your head, or was that something you kind of read or saw that really decided to start doing that a little bit more?
Yeah, it was kind of like I kind of learned it the hard way from like just like needing to get better at like certain weaknesses of my game. And like I would look at it and I was keeping stats through an app called Decade. I don't know if you've heard of it, but I think it's getting pretty popular now. And you'd look at the stats and go, okay, this is what I need to get better at. And you're like, well, I've been doing this. I thought I've been working on this. I must need to like improve on my practice. And so then you start thinking like, okay, am I doing enough? And you're like, probably not. And my dad was sort of like helping me and trying to like tell me like, okay, like you need to work more on like doing drills and stuff and doing like specific games. And my swing coach would help me with that too. I would ask him like, hey, do you have more like putting drills or more short game like games that I could do? And then I started doing those and I started seeing results. And, once you see results, then it's history, and you got to keep doing that. But yeah.
I know you mentioned in a conversation in the past that you took lessons from a swing coach, and you've kind of told me like, I think this was like a year ago, you were more like, I don't really see him too often because I've kind of been working on the same thing. Like every time I go down there, it's like my right heel or something. And you're kind of like, I've kind of just stopped saying, are you still kind of at that place where you're not actively taking lessons on like a regular basis?
Yeah. So I still have my same swing coach that I've had for how long, like 4 or 5 years now. He's great. His name's Matt Kilgariff. He used to be the head of player development at Olympic. And now he's working down at the Bridges at Rancho Santa Fe. And he went to the Butch Harmon School of Golf in the early 2000s. And so he's really just sort of like taught me the swing that Butch Harmon taught Tiger and like Adam Scott in the early 2000s. And so, I mean, there was a period my freshman and sophomore year where I went through a lot of like actively like swing changes. I would go to him and he would be like, okay, we got to start here. And then every time I would go, it would be something different. And then eventually, we started comparing my positions in my backswing and stuff to Adam Scott in the early 2000s, and it started to look really similar. And he'd be like, okay, well now from here, like all you can really do better mechanically is just get older and get stronger and like improve your footwork so that you're not like jumping at it or making like erratic moves. So that's something that I've been working on at like balance and footwork. But as far as I see it, like keeping in line with his philosophy, his swing philosophy, there's not a whole lot more I can do, like mechanically to like improve my swing and improve my consistency. So it's more about like fine tuning it or like maintaining it and like working on other things, like working on, consistency or working on like doing games and doing drills on the range rather than just like working on mechanics, because, and that's like, it's the same sort of thing when you like go onto the short game facility, like you said, and hit like a bunch of chips and like work on your form. And that's great sometimes, but more often than not, I'm going to be all over the place and I'm going to be trying to get up and down, like trying to simulate golf. Right. So when I'm on the range, that's kind of what I'm going to be doing too. And every once in a while, I'm going to be like, okay, I want to work on this mechanic for the day. But if you're not actively going through swing changes, I don't think mechanics is the biggest like thing you need to be worried about, because you look at everybody on tour and they all have crazy different swings. And as long as you have something that you can make work for yourself and something that you can do consistently, that's what's going to work for you, you know?
Yeah, one thing I've always kind of thought about is like there's a difference between a golfer and a swinger. So like my coach Tom is a he taught me that kind of way back when I first met him, and he's like, golfers like Ricky Fowler or even like Matthew Wolff or Scotty Scheffler, like those guys are just purely golfers. Like they don't really care how their swing looks. Like they all got funky swings. Like you probably have a better looking swing. I probably have a better looking swing, but you know, they're shooting, you know, sub 70 every single time. And it's really just like, I feel like so many golfers and junior golfers even weekend golfers are locked on like this idea of like a perfect golf swing. Like if they just get to this position, if they just, you know, impact the ball like this, they're going to have like the perfect ball swing, and then everything will start clicking. But it's really like, that's not like a realistic thought. Like even Tiger's going to miss. I mean, PGA 2018 or 2019, he missed every fairway on the front nine, was like 2 under. You know, it's like, there's just certain things that are just, you know, like you have golfers and you have swingers. Would you say like that's just a short game thing, or that's more of like a mindset thing in the change between
No,
that?
it's 100% a mindset thing. My coach Matt would always tell me, you know, like when you're on the range, you work on mechanics and you work on your swing, but when you go out on the course, he's like, you got to just hit shots. You got to play golf, and you got to, you know, maybe you want to think about your setup and like, okay, like I'm in the right position now, but then you got to switch your mind to thinking about like what shot you're going to hit. And when you're out there on the course, you got to be thinking about where you're aiming and what shot shape you're going to play and stuff like that. Or like if you're going to take a little bit off of an 8-iron or versus like hitting a full 9 or something. When you have all those things to think about, you can't be in your head about mechanics all the time. And that's something that I struggled with a little bit. You know, I would be working on something and then I'd go out on the course and I'd choose a wrong target and go for a pin, you know, just subconsciously. You're not really thinking about it. You're like, okay, I'm stepping up. I'm like, okay, you know, whatever. I got to keep my right elbow in or something. Right. And then you miss it 2 yards right of the pin and you're short-sighted in a bunker and it's an auto bogey and you're just not going to score well that way. And, you know, golf's about shooting the lowest score. So that's really where your focus has to lie, especially when you get on the course.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Like, it's really all about scoring. It's not about how your swing looks, any of this. But talking about scoring, you have done that in your golf career, absolutely. You were the best player on your fall squad this past season. I know the season's still going. You're now into spring. But there's always a difference between recreational golf and tournament golf. And you've won juniors growing up, and you were obviously exceeding very well in your first stint with Columbia. And I will admit myself, I've played junior tournaments pretty much 4 or 5 years now, and I've won maybe 1 or 2 events, but I'm definitely more of like a recreational guy. Like tournament atmosphere is great, and I love it. I love competing, any sports. But, you know, there's certain kids that when they need that putt for par on the 15th hole, you know, they get it. And I've watched you play. I watched you play a tight match with Jacob in Olympic. And even your putt on 18, you know, you had to have it. You know, putt on 17, had to have it. And, you know, those are kind of putts where, like, I maybe technically might putt just as well, statistically might putt just as well, but it's something in the tournament atmosphere that I think some guys have and some guys don't. When you play a tournament round versus a recreational round, say you're not working on anything mentally, what's like the difference there that you really are able to laser in and make those big putts?
Well, it's just like, and a lot of people have noticed that about me too. Like some of my teammates too. Like I might be exempt into a tournament based off of like play in a prior tournament and then like not play well in qualifying or whatever. And then I show up to a tournament and I just like play really well. And my teammates are like, dude, like, what do you, like, how did you do that? Like, I thought you weren't going to play well or something. And really all it is just like, it's just giving like 100% effort when you're on the course and when you're just like focusing 100% of your effort on scoring when you're on the course, like in competition, and just having laser focus on everything that you're doing. And then like when, like if I'm just like in a casual round or a recreational round, that's where I might be thinking more about swing, or I might be thinking more about like how to get better, and I'll be worried less about like what I'm actually shooting. So when I actually like dial it up in a tournament and try and squeeze like every ounce of performance out, I definitely notice that I play better and that I score better. And that's just like, I don't know, that's just kind of how I play.
How have you found that mentally like draining? Because I know like doing it in one round's tough. Doing it in 36 holes is tough. Doing it for whatever 72 holes is, I mean, that's more than a marathon. That's like a triathlon right there. Mentally, how do you stay that focused every shot, every hole, every swing, you know?
Mm-hmm. It helps to get into a rhythm and have a routine, you know. It really helps me when I stick to like my pre-shot routine and like my routine over the ball. And it's just sort of like, it helps you like, and also too, when you're hitting a lot of fairways and you're making the game easy on yourself, it becomes a lot easier to like stay in rhythm and like stay relaxed. But you're right. You can't like just grind for 5 hours straight and expect yourself to like be able to do that all the time. So in between shots, you know, I'll like, you know, think about something else, or I might be on my phone or something for a second. And I have no problems with just taking my mind off of off of the tournament, because when I'm walking, you know, and I'm 200 yards from my ball, there's no point in like stressing about the next shot. You know, I'll think about that when I'm 100 yards from my ball.
Absolutely.
You know, so you definitely have to be able to like take a step back and like chill out for a second. But when it comes down to like thinking about where what my target's going to be, what type of shot I'm going to play, then you got to fully lock in again. So I definitely think that there's room for you to like, you know, take a step back. But you definitely have to be like locked in, I think.
Absolutely. Right. So you've had tournament success. We talked about you're the best player on your fall team, and that actually led to some pretty cool things. You were able to get a chance, because you're the best player, to try to qualify for the Genesis Open, or the Genesis Invitational, which is an awesome tournament down in LA. And when I heard that at first, I didn't take a second to register, because the Genesis Invitational is not like your John Deere or like Buick Open.
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, you're getting like Adam Scott's playing, Roy's playing, Brooks is playing, like Max Homa. Like you're getting, you know, top tier golfers. You know, it's not just an amateur kind of event where a lot of people miss out on it. And you know, it's actually really cool. I looked into the tournaments. You know, it's only 17 players to qualify, and you said it's almost like a Monday qualifier type thing, but it's 17 people.
Yeah.
Going into that event and playing the course that's set up to be a tournament PGA style course, did you find yourself like astronomically far from where the pros are, or were you kind of in that setting and when you were kind of like, you know, I can, you know, I'm a freshman, I can kind of hang with these guys, you know, give me a little bit longer?
Yeah. So, I mean, the way I qualified for that is basically from the beginning of the fall semester, whoever's like nationally adjusted ranking was lowest on the team was going to go. And that ended up being me. And that's basically just like, it basically like looks at your head to heads versus like your team versus like everybody else. And like, although I had the second lowest scoring differential because one of my teammates played really well in the first tournament that I wasn't in, I ended up like just edging him out in the head-to-head battle. So that's just basically how I wasn't like, you know, I don't want to give the impression that I'm like, you know, like by far and away the number one on my team, because I'm definitely not, definitely not when you look at the year on a whole. But I did have a good fall, and it was an amazing opportunity. We got to play first thing Monday morning. Nobody had seen the course. You know, none of the pros had had a practice round yet. It had been primed by the PGA Tour for, you know, however many weeks they had it closed. And sorry, 1 second. My light shuts off every half hour if I don't move.
No problem.
It's really annoying. But anyway, yeah, nobody had seen the course. It was in perfect condition. And yeah, I mean, you get out there and there's 17 guys. Like you said, it's a Monday qualifier, basically. One guy, the winner, gets to play in the Genesis, and they had all 10 of the top 10 players in the world in the field for the first time this year. So, I mean, it's one of the top events that the guys play in. I mean, it's like up there with the Players, and the Farmers Insurance also gets a lot of good players. I'd have to like sit down and like look at the list, but it's definitely one of the best regular tour events. And So you got a Monday qualifier. Usually it's 80 people for one spot, but it's only 17 college kids for one spot. It's an incredible opportunity. And they got you tipped out. You're playing the tees that the pros play. They're not giving you anything. The tees, the pins were pretty benign. But yeah, I mean, the guy who won it ended up going like 5 deep, and it's a really good opportunity to like look at like where you stand. And I did not have a good day that day. Did not play well, but it was out there. If I wanted to go pro right now, I would not make it. That's for sure. Those guys are really, really good. And it puts it into perspective, because it's just golf, and they're just playing the same game, and the course isn't that long. Like, it's just a normal golf course. So it like gives you confidence in that sense, but it's also like, wow, like, yeah, these guys are freaking good. Like Joaquin Neiman shot, like he broke like all the tournament records.
Yeah.
In the tournament, just he shot like 64 twice, like during the week, on Thursday and Friday. So yeah, it puts it in perspective that you really got to be good, but they're just humans. And so it was definitely cool to see it and be there. And I hope I get to do it again next year. Hope I can find that opportunity.
I gotta ask, how was the wind the day you played? I know the wind can get pretty brutal out on that course.
It was like, well, first of all, my tee time was 6:40 in the morning.
Wow.
The sun came up, and like I think the sun was supposed to rise 1 minute before I teed off or something.
Jeez.
So as far as wind goes, there wasn't much, because it was first thing in the morning. So yeah, like I said, I mean, it wasn't playing too hard. The greens were firm, obviously, but they're POA. They can't get too firm unless they're completely baked out. But yeah, it didn't play too much of a factor. If you were playing well, you could score, and that was seen by like the 2 guys went under, 1 guy was around even. If you had your game on, you could definitely play well. I just didn't, and I didn't play well, but it was really cool to see the course.
Absolutely. Was I know you didn't play your best, you've obviously stated, but even like playing a course, like I know myself, when I don't play well at a certain course, you can kind of like finish that on and be like, you know what, at the end of the day, that course is like still gettable. Like that course isn't out of the under par range. Did you kind of have that sense, playing in those conditions, those PGA Tour conditions, or you're like, this is at a whole nother level from where my game is now?
Yeah, it was definitely scoreable. I mean, Riv is one of the tougher courses that they play on tour, so it's not like a cakewalk. You had like 17 of the best college players around, and only 2 went under par. So it was definitely not easy, but if you had every part of your game working and you were pretty dialed, you could score well.
Is professional golf something you're looking to definitely try to pursue in the future?
I'll just have to see. It's really hard to make it. You see a lot of really good guys. There's guys at Cal Club, California Golf Club, where I'm a member. There's some really good college players that are trying to make it currently, and it's just really hard. So I just want to see how good I can get in these next couple of years, and just see where I'm at, if it's worth the run. But you also have to look at a cost benefit analysis of what devoting for your first 5 years out of college to golf is going to do. What that's going to cost you in your career. And if you're willing to sacrifice that, and if you want to do it, by all means, it's, follow your dreams, but, I'll just have to see whether it's worth it for me in a couple years.
Thankfully you still got some time, but I do think that's one thing people don't realize is golf is unlike many other sports where a lot of your paychecks are going to be performance based. So like a lot of the tournaments, if you're self-funding, if you don't make the cut, you're not getting your money back. And then, it's not like you can go to China or Europe in basketball and get on a team or something. The other thing about golf is the expenses. You got entry fees, you got traveling fees, you got to pay for hotels, you got to find somewhere to stay, food, gas, all that stuff. It all adds up. And it's like, it's definitely not one of the cheaper sports if you're trying to pursue it in the future. And I definitely think that's something people don't realize. golf is
Yeah.
definitely one of the tougher sports to try to get on tour. It's not easy.
Yeah, if you're gonna try and play if you're gonna play professionally, I always tell people like if you're not one of the 125 guys who have a tour card, it's pretty tough. Unless
Yeah.
you're like on the Corn Ferry Tour and you're tour bound and it's just a matter of time. If you're struggling or playing the Latin Tour or something, or you're playing mini tours or Q School, that's just you're traveling a lot and whether you eat or not is dependent on how well you play golf, and that's a tough life to live. So it's really tough if you're not one of the best guys. So like I said, it'll have to be something that I think about going forward. But yeah, I just want to see if it's a possibility in the next few years.
Absolutely. Do you have like a problem with the whole most sports have like a draft, like football, basketball, have like a draft, baseball has a draft. Do you think there's a problem with, even from the junior level to try to get into college, of the whole recruiting process with golf? From trying to get to college from there and then trying to get to the pros. Like it's so, you have to go so deep into the weeds to try to figure some of this stuff out, and what tournaments to play, what tours to play. Should I play an AJGA? Should I play JTNC, JGA? Like it's so, it's not cut and dry.
Complicated.
Yeah, it's so complicated. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, take football, for example. If I wanted to get recruited for football, I play on my team. Maybe I go to a private school to get on a better team and get more recognition or whatever. But you make your highlights, send your highlights in, whatever. Boom, done, easy. That's what everybody's doing. But with golf, it's a lot more complicated as to what tournaments to play in. And unfortunately, I think a lot of the coaches like looking at junior golf tournaments. And in my opinion, there's too much emphasis on junior golf scoreboard rankings and on AJGA rankings. And I think it's kind of sometimes used as a shortcut to look at where players stack up. And I'm a little biased because my ranking wasn't very good for the longest time. And so, I have a little bit of a chip on my shoulder from that point of view. But, when you look at someone's ranking, they're weighing different things differently. They're weighing, they don't care if you played in 2 tournaments over the course of 12 months. If you played really good in those 2 tournaments, you might be ranked 4th in California for your class. And it's well, maybe there's another guy who's had a couple bad tournaments in the big tournaments. And maybe they're weighing AJGAs more than they're weighing another tournament, or they're not even looking at amateur tournaments. I could go out and win the San Francisco City Championship, which is one of the biggest amateur tournaments in the Bay Area. And that's not going to show up on my rankings anywhere.
Right.
Unless they look at WAGR rankings, but coaches don't really look at that unless you have somebody who's really good. So I definitely think that it's really complicated when it comes to what tournaments to play. Unfortunately, I think you got to play a lot of AJGAs and try and do well in your junior tournaments. But if you want to play in amateur tournaments, I played in a lot of amateur tournaments, you just have to communicate that to the coach and be like, I played in this tournament. I played well. I know you're a coach that lives in New York State, but this is a big amateur tournament here. And this is what I shot, and try and get their attention that way. So there's a lot of ways to go about it. But I wish rankings played a little smaller role in it.
I got to ask, in the whole recruiting process, how important do you think it is just sending emails to coaches and just getting your name out there?
It's the most important thing. I mean, you have to sending an email. It wasn't hard for me because I could write it out and I could be reread it and be okay, I'm confident in what I'm saying here. But yeah, you definitely have to just email them back and forth and just send them a resume initially and send them updates and just stay in their inbox, because if they keep seeing you over and over again, you'll get on their list, and they're not necessarily going to take the best player that's available, because they don't know all the players. They're only going to take the best player that they know of, so you gotta be one that they know of, basically. That's kind of how it works. And, then you can start calling them once you get to be once they know you, you know, you can be like, hey, can we have a conversation over the phone? Talk to them like, hey, I'm interested. Maybe if you have some questions for them, get more personal in the recruiting process. That's always great. But I think emailing is the biggest thing, because whenever coaches can get around to it, they can look at their email and they get updates from you. And they're like, okay, wow, this kid keeps emailing me. He must be like continually playing well. And that's just the biggest thing, because like I said, they're not going to offer a kid that they've never heard of unless he's like super duper good, which doesn't happen often. So you really gotta get your name in their heads.
I think a lot of people are probably listening to this right now. I don't know. You are downplaying it, in my opinion, a little bit, but they're probably not hearing like this amazing junior tournament player. You know, like I know you probably know some of the names when you were growing up, just kids who are always winning those junior tournaments. You saw the same kids always up in the top three. So I think a lot of them are like, how is this kid at Columbia University, you know, which is a super prestigious school. But you did also graduate valedictorian from your high school, Burlingame High School. Just academically, what are some of the things what are you majoring in, and what's kind of like the lifestyle out in Columbia, and, you know, now that you're there?
Yeah. So like, first to address the first part about like, you know, like I said, I wasn't like super high in the rankings when I was like a freshman and sophomore, but then, you know, like there is room to improve. And if you're not like at the level that you want to be at, there's no need to get discouraged when you're younger, because you still have time to show that improvement. And there's a lot to be said about a kid's potential, I think, just personally. And being, you know, having a lot of room to grow. Because if I were a coach, I would want somebody who's going to perform for me the best when he's a college player, not perform the best when they're a junior golfer. And junior golf is it's indicative of what you're going to do as a college golfer, but it's not the end all be all. And I think there's a lot of factors that go into it. And then academics wise, I was one of many valedictorians. All you had to do was get straight A's throughout high school to get it. So I think there's like 20 of us. Not easy, but I wasn't like crazy smart. But yeah, the academics are really hard. Columbia's got a big common core that they have everybody go through. So there's a bunch of common core classes that you have to do. I can't declare my major until a year from now. I'm probably going to be economics or something related to economics. But yeah, I mean, it's a grind. Classes are hard, and but that's really the way it is everywhere. And it also depends on how much effort you want to put in, because if you want to get good grades or you want to go to grad school or something, and you need good grades, then you're going to be putting in a lot of effort. But if you're like, well, I don't really care if I get a B-, then you maybe don't need to study as hard for a test or something like that. So I'd say school's hard pretty much everywhere you go, and it depends on how much you put into it. But Columbia is, you know, they definitely stick it to you and they make you do your work. And there's no like create your own major like there is at Brown. There's none of that BS. They're serious. So you kind of have to match that.
What's it kind of like being a student athlete out there, just time management wise?
You know, there's a saying, I'm probably going to butcher it, but even our own like school president or our own dean or something said like, there's the big three. There's like the sleep, social life, and grades, and you get to pick two. So, I mean, when you add a fourth in there and you play a sport, you can have your sport and then you can have like sleep, social life, or grades. So, you know, there's just not enough hours in the day sometimes, but you know, it depends on how smart you are. If you're really smart, you don't have to study as much, but I'd say you just try as hard as you can and do the best you can. And you just have to be satisfied with doing the best that you can, because there's always going to be somebody smarter than you. And you just have to try and focus on the things that you can control and focus on working as hard as you can, because like I said, that's all you can control. And that's really how you have to grade yourself.
I love that, like sleep, social life, and school.
And grades, yeah.
Grades, yeah. And then if you had a sport, I think that's, you know, as much as it might sound harsh, it is realistic, especially when you get to college and you're like very independent. Like I know my coach Tom told me like his first few years at Northwestern, he was all golf and then social life, and his grades and everything else were dipping. And he's like, he looks back on that time now, and he's like, man, I wish I just grinded more in school and all that stuff. But yeah, that's a very realistic.
Fun, though,
yeah, absolutely.
But you can get fun in any way you want. You don't have to follow everybody else. Like if you get all your fun from playing golf, then don't feel bad about just playing golf and doing schoolwork and stuff. But you definitely don't want to burn yourself out or anything.
Right.
That's just definitely not worth it. But it's a balance that everybody has to find for themselves. And it's something that you can't ignore because, like I said, a lot of days there's not enough hours in the day. And so you just kind of have to figure it out on your own. And yeah.
Would you say you're keeping up a pretty rigorous practice schedule, just golf-wise, compared to when you were in high school or during the summers?
It's hard. I don't practice as much as I did in high school, and especially I don't. And I think that's the same for everybody on the team. I wish I could practice more. We have being in the city, especially, we have to drive 30 minutes to get to the course and then 45 back. And during the first half of our spring season, none of the golf courses are open except for one course that's like a 9-hole, like par 3 type place. So a lot of your work you're doing is in the in the simulation room. And so, you can put in the work and your practice is going to be different. You're going to be focused more on mechanics and stuff like that. But yeah, college golf is very different to high school golf. When we go to a tournament, we went to a tournament at GCU over spring break. There was 18 teams there. Columbia had one range stall. We show up an hour early. We get some breakfast or something. We get some breakfast at the hotel. We're there at 7 a.m. for an 8 a.m. shotgun. We got 7 guys trying to hit on one range stall. You're not going to get a full hour's warm up like you do in high school. You got classes that are so demanding. You're not going to go to the course. We're privileged as California kids with good weather and golf courses everywhere. You're not going to go to the course and grind for 4 hours every day. That's pretty unrealistic with the workload that we have. So you just have to learn to be a college golfer because it's different. But that doesn't mean you can't play at a high level. But yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a realistic approach into what it's like to play at a certain level when you're trying to balance multiple things. I think a lot of people think that maybe when they go off to college, they're going to be even more independent and have more time. Or maybe they think, they can just balance that heavy workload with golf. But it's really like you got to make sacrifices. You can't. And golf is not a sport like basketball where 2 hours in the gym is plenty. Golf is like 30 minutes putting is not going to keep your putting in good form if you do that every day. It's really something you kind of got to perpetually work on. So yeah, I think that's a very realistic approach when it comes to golf.
Yeah. You also have to learn to like be able to just show up and like have the confidence and have the just ability to like play well, even when you don't have the best practice situation. Coach told us a story of some club pro years ago who wouldn't practice at all. And then he'd go out and like win every tournament he played in. And they want to know how he did it. And like, all he did was like, when he was playing well, he stood on a piece of butcher's paper and traced out his feet and his ball position and just basics like that. And he would just return to that every time he would have a tournament ready to go. And then he would go out and he'd win. And it's kind of the same attitude when you don't have as much practice going on. You got to be like, okay, like, let me get my fundamentals down. Coach talked a lot about this the past couple of weeks. He's like, guys, get your fundamentals down. We're headed into Princeton's tournament and then Ivy's, and, get your fundamentals down and just be ready to go out there and play golf and be an athlete. Got to do a lot more of that, I think, in college.
How much of that is just mental too? Just having the confidence that I know my game. I can go out there, go 2 under, 3 under.
I definitely say that a lot of it is mental. It's confidence is so big. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how to elaborate on that. But if you go out to the course and you're sort of unflappable and you're like, whatever, I hit 15 range balls and I putted to a hole that 4 other players were putting to, and like it doesn't matter, like I'm just used to it and I'm just going out there and I know I'm going to play well, then you're going to be a lot better than the guy who's like trying to work on his swing on the range beforehand, and you've got like 3 teammates nagging at him to like, get off the mat and like let somebody else hit. So yeah, you definitely have to be a little more mentally tough, I think.
I was unfortunately like both of those guys in junior golf. I was the guy who would show up to my tournament maybe 10 minutes before my tee time and have no idea what ball flight I'm hitting. I'm like trying to figure out, dude, can I get this ball to cut?
You hit 2 balls and you're like, oh, it's a draw today. Let's go.
Yeah, like it's a draw. It is what it is. Haven't hit a draw since last summer, but you just go out there, play that. But I think that's an awesome insight into what it's like, a realistic version into college golf. I guess, have you gotten out to play Yale's golf course since you've been there? I know they have like one of the best private golf courses.
Yeah, they have the best university course in the country. I mean, that's what it's consistently rated number 1. But we don't, at Columbia, we don't go to their tournament in the fall. But yeah, I've heard good things, but no, I have not played it yet.
For sure. I don't have too much more to touch.
Although,
go ahead.
Before we wrap it up, thinking about Yale, this fall we played against them in the 125th anniversary match of the first ever intercollegiate golf match. So in 1896, Yale came down to play Columbia in New York, and it was the first ever basically college golf match. It was the first ever college golf match, and so we played them again with the same format and everything 125 years later in the end of October, and we beat the crap out of them, and we beat them 15-2 in the holes won format. So we returned the favor because they beat us 125 years ago. So I just wanted to mention that while we're on the topic of Yale.
That's a pretty historic tournament right there.
Yeah, it was.
That's a pretty sick thing to be a part of.
Yeah, I think we got some coverage in the New York Times, and I think in Golf Magazine too. And we were joking. We were like, Coach, you should have told Golf Channel about it earlier, because they would have come out. It was October. The playoffs were over. There was no PGA Tour golf going on. What are they going to talk about on the Golf Channel? They're going to talk. They probably spent. I wasn't even paying attention. They probably spent 3 months talking about Tiger's leg. So we could have used a little more coverage too. But yeah, it was a super cool event. Super awesome to be a part of something that historic.
Yeah, that's pretty sick. Are you looking to ramp things up coming up back this summer? Are you going to come back to the West Coast and get some tournaments in and stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. We've got Princeton's tournament this weekend. Just coming off of our own invitational yesterday. Coming up, we got Princeton's tournament, and then 2 weekends after that, we play in the Ivy League Championship, which is a huge deal for all the Ivy League schools. That's basically what we're working towards, because we have aspirations for like the NCAA regional and beyond. But our pathway to that is winning the Ivy League Championship, and I think we got a good shot. So yeah, hopefully we can take care of that and see what we can do in regionals. But coming back home to the Bay Area, I've got some tournaments lined up for the early summer. And like I said, Bay Cities, we got to repeat.
Absolutely.
We got the talent. There's no excuses this year. Although we are missing Matt Sanchez, which is going to be a huge
We're also going to be missing Nix. Nix isn't playing this season. I
heard that from Jacob. We got to talk some sense into him. That's something that's in the works right now. He's not ruled out yet. He's on the IL.
He's on the IL, absolutely.
But,
definitely.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to a good summer for sure.
Absolutely. I know you're not a big social media guy. If people here who listen, I know I got a bunch of junior golf buddies who are excited for this. Where's a good place to kind of follow, maybe your college performances, something they can kind of track it? Does it just go to Columbia University Athletics? Where's a good place to kind of look you up?
I think our Instagram is CU Lions men's golf.
Okay.
Just look up like Columbia men's golf. And then the same with the Twitter. We have a Twitter too that gets updated by coach or somebody else. That's yeah, like you said, I don't have an Instagram or a Snap or anything or Twitter or anything. So if you want to follow me, that's, I guess, if I do something good, that's where it's going to be. If I don't do anything good, you get to hear about my teammates, which is great too, because I just had one of my teammates tied for second in our tournament yesterday.
Awesome.
I got some really good players too. That's also another good way if you want to play. If you want to like get in touch with a coach or like show your interest, is to like follow their team's Instagram.
Right.
I think we had like a kid, like we were talking about, some kid followed our Instagram that like a few of my teammates knew. And so that's another good way to like show that you care. But yeah, I think that's all I got to say about that.
All right. Just to wrap this up, I will definitely find those links and put them down below, whether you're watching on YouTube or Spotify. But thank you so much for doing this. I had an awesome time just catching up, and I'm excited for you to come during the summer and to check out how the rest of this season goes. Good luck on everything.
Thanks, man. I can't wait.
Yeah, appreciate it. Have a good night.
You too. Take care.